I'm Anne from Stop Oljelettinga in Norway. It's one of the member projects of this A22 network. I'm originally from Germany, but a year ago, I decided to move to Norway and start my master program here. But yeah, after some time, I realized that it seems a bit contradictory living in like one of the most beautiful natures around, but then living in a country that is still handing out licenses to search for new oil on the Norwegian shelf. And like the contradiction between like the beautiful landscape and the fact that they're like willingly destroying it, was quite or created the urge in me to do more than maybe just do food sharing and be in like the green office of my university and these things. So Stop Oljelettinga came across, and I now devote all of my time and energy into this campaign because it feels like the necessary and right thing to do at this time of the year, or this time of like the year that we are in now. I'm gonna hand over to Rosa now from Fireproof Australia, who's gonna read the A22 declaration.
Okay. We are the last generation of the old world. We are here today to say we will create a new world where humanity embraces itself, forgives itself, loves itself, and commits to continue our great adventure. As the last generation, we will do whatever it takes to protect our generation and all future generations, as is our inalienable right. The old world is dying. We are in the last hour, the darkest hour. This world is being decimated before our eyes. We are in between moments. What we do now decides the fate of both this world and the next. So we decide we are no longer indulging in our fears, our despair, our resentments. We are putting ourselves behind us. Together, in community, we are taking hold of a higher purpose, the source of what it is to be truly human. It calls to us across the ages, and with its power, we will bring down those who kill to maintain their regimes of extraction. This is the old world. It cannot continue. We are here to make clear, humanity is better than to give in to extinction. We are here to say society has not turned away from love and truth. It has not embraced evil and death. The world we desire, the one we can have, is already in reach, but we have to reach for it. We are not here to highlight, plead, or entertain. We are here to reach for the change that is required for this to happen. We are here to force governments to slash carbon emissions, nothing less. We are here for action, not words. We have a plan. We are mobilizing in our many nations and many cultures. Teams will run projects. Projects will make demands on governments. We are reaching out to anyone who will reach back and join hands to create this new world. If we are refused, we will disrupt, week after week, as those who came before us did many times in the struggle for human rights. We speak directly to the public and recruit in hundreds of open meetings. We commit to mass civil disobedience. This is our solemn responsibility. Sacred rights require a sacred duty to defend them. And until everyone is free, none of us are free. Only then will justice be done. We will not fall into the trap of hating the other. The other is part of all of us. Our hands do not hold weapons, and our hearts are open. We are humanity, believing in humanity. We are democracy. We are open and non-violent. We are care and we are freedom. We will accept the consequences of our actions and look our destiny directly in the eye. Bring it on. While there remains breath in our bodies, we will not stop. This is our life now. We are the last generation, but we are also the first. We are everywhere. We are coming. Everything will change. The old becomes the new, and everyone can change.
Thank you, Rosa, for reading these powerful words. We're at a pivotal time in human history, and we're encouraging you to join the A22 Network, to mobilize in a nonviolent and organized fashion. And details on how you can join your local A22 network will be provided during this call and emailed to you also afterwards. So some practical information about this call. It will be about 2 hours long, and we will hear from 3 women at the forefront of the climate movements in Bangladesh, Nigeria, and Tanzania. Yanatul Muva, Gloria Kasang Bulus, and Nyendo Kinyonga, for about 15 minutes each. After that, we will hear from people from Letzte Generation in Germany, Ultima Generazione in Italy, and Declare Emergency from the US, who have been or are about to take action. And they will introduce us what we can do in order if we're facing this situation, and give firsthand accounts and statements about what it is to step up and be in civil resistance. And after that, also a very important part will start, because we will go into smaller rooms to talk about what we've heard. So then it's your time to talk, and we encourage you to stay, and please stay for this part, because even if you're unsure about in which way you want to take action, it's important to address the difficult truths that we're about to hear, and also to talk about them. And these breakout rooms will show us that we're not in it alone, but we can process these things all together. And yes, in the end, of course, we hope that you will decide to organize in your local space and mobilize. But first step is that we talk to each other. So now let's start by welcoming and introducing our 3 speakers, women at the forefront of climate movements in Bangladesh, Nigeria, and Tanzania. Thank you so much for coming, making the long way into the Zoom call. We are honored to have you here with us. And we had a change in the running order, so Gloria Bulus will start first. Gloria Bulus is the founder of a non-profit organization called Bridge, that Gap Initiative. She's the convener and coordinator of Network of Civil Society and Environment, and the team lead for XR Kaduna in Nigeria. Happy to have you here, Gloria.
Thank you so much for having me. I wouldn't have imagined being anywhere today than joining this meeting, and also speaking for issues that I'm so passionate about, that I feel needs urgent attention, and we need everyone on ground to put hands together to address these issues. So it's no longer news that the impact of climate change is raving on communities, states, nations. It's happening globally. But the question is, what action are we taking to address these issues of climate change? And so we've been hearing climate change, climate change, climate change. But then are we not feeling the impacts of this climate change? I mean, it's so evident that, you could actually tell that there's something happening to our climate is actually changing. It seems like you could just use your hand to grab those impacts and then put them all together and begin to show people. And that's exactly how it is. And in my community, we're not left behind. And so the impact of climate change is not evenly distributed. The most vulnerable are the most impacted in terms of capacity, in terms of technical capacity, in terms of funding, and then looking at women, the elderly, the sick, and children. But the burden is more on women because these women have to take care of the elderly, they have to take care of the children, they have to take care of the sick. And so when these impacts come, the men have an option. They move out to get another source of livelihood, or they just can't cope because women are more resilient, women are stronger than men. No woman will watch her family suffer without making efforts if it means her sacrificing her life. And so most men, when they try, they get tired and they give up. But women are not known to give up. And that is why women are the drivers of that solution we need for climate change. Without women, we can't get half of it done. We need more women in the space to be able to take more action. In the northern part of Nigeria, where I come from, we've always enjoyed very beautiful nature in terms of biodiversity, trees and species. And growing up, I remember the street where my primary school was. High school, I remember we could see bats everywhere. I mean, you could actually tell that the whole street is infested with bats. But unfortunately, I see them no more. They are no more. And so you begin to wonder what is happening. They've made that particular street their habitat because of the trees there. But then we're losing them. We're not just losing biodiversity, we're also, women are facing forced migration. They're becoming climate refugees because most women in local communities are agrarians in Nigeria. And so because of the inconsistency in the annual rainfall, they become climate refugees because they have to move out to be able to keep up with their livelihoods. They're losing their livelihoods. And it's not just affecting them, it's affecting other people too that are not agrarians because the cost of food is on the increase. Food is no longer available. And so let's think about the children. Those children will be forced into malnutrition because they're not getting the right portion of food, the right nutrition to be able to keep up with them growing up. And so who is saddled with the burden of taking care of those children when they are faced with malnutrition? It boils down to the women. And so in Nigeria, we've heard a lot happening about insecurity. It's all over the news. We're hearing about the farmer headers clashes and quite a lot. And have you wondered what is happening to the farmer headers clashes? What is the cause? It's all climate related. And so this insecurity is on the increase, and it has also contributed to forced migrations in the northern part of Nigeria. We're having extreme temperatures, we're having floods. Yesterday, I got so devastating videos and pictures of floods ravaging communities in northern Nigeria, in the whole of Nigeria. I mean, you could see houses, there was a rainstorm that brought in a whole, almost over 15 houses in the community. And that's so, I mean, that's really so sad. When you keep hearing these things, they're all climate related. They are all climate related impacts. And so we've lost livelihoods, we're losing not just livelihoods, health also is questioned. We're having all sorts of climate related diseases are coming up, environmental diseases are coming up. And so that puts another burden again on the health of the people, and the women are left to take care of the sick as well. And so with loss of livelihoods, with no money in their pockets or little money in their pockets, how then will they cope with the bills? I mean, the burden is so huge. We've done quite a lot. We've put in a few efforts to see how we can help them. But at that, our capacities are limited. We've been able to pull up advocacy, visits to the government. We've also visited the legislators in my country. We've had women groups, especially the smallholder farmers, women who have come together and had press briefings. And why are they doing that? What are they asking for? They're asking for alternatives to their source of energy, to their cooking. I mean, they want the energy efficient cook stove to be available to them at a reduced rate or probably even for free. Because one of the drivers of climate change is deforestation. And because we're blessed with very rich natural resources, we have this, the impact of climate change is mainly human induced. And so we have a lot of tree felling happening around. And so to avert that, the women feel if they advocate for energy efficient cook stove, they will be able to address climate change to an extent. They have raised their voices, they have called out to the government, they have used the media, and yet little or nothing has been done around that. We have asked the parliament for a year of action in one of our advocacy visits. And what we mean for a year of action is for them to look at all issues around climate change and environment and begin to address them. We have also tried to pull up livelihood support for women. We did that by providing alternative source of livelihoods for them. We have taught them how to vertical sack farming. We have also provided a hub for them where they can learn how to sew. But then, I mean, the food industry is at stake, moving these women to another source of livelihood. But of course, they have to survive. But then, how many women can we cater for with the interventions we have? They're limited. And so we had to look at communities that have internally displaced women who are double hit, not just by the impact of climate change, but also insecurity and also COVID-19. We have also done a lobby again at the National Assembly, seeking for climate justice as well. And we have also tried to see how we can pull up social protection packages for them. Is it health insurance? But it hasn't been easy because these health insurance are not free. We have also done campaigns. We have used the media. Media has been our strong partners. And we have used them, leveraging on their support to be able to speak out to the world to know that, yes, these women need help. And we also organize quarterly media roundtables to be able to speak with journalists around issues of climate change, and so they can help us amplify our voices. And so in the bid to also address these issues, I found out that one person cannot drive this entire process. One person cannot make this change. We need collective effort. We need people to come together to be able to drive this process. We need one voice. We need so many voices. If I'm in a room and I scream, there's a limit to where my voice will reach. But if I can pull up like 10, 20, 50 people and we all scream together on the same issue, definitely our voices will go not just near, but far and wide. And so we came up with a coalition called a network of civil society in environment. We brought in different people interested working around climate issues. Is it climate governance? Is it health, academia, media? And we even have a few government people as part of it. And so we've been able to walk around seeing how we can pull the support for women groups, how we can pull in this support and then hold the government accountable and also push around for government to be able to take actions to address the climate issues around. And so with that network, we were able to meet with one of the commissioners for environment in my state, the Commissioner for Environment in my state. And we had just one ask, and he granted it unto us to form an accountability, a permanent dialogue mechanism where the government and the civil society can come together to discuss around issues of climate change and how to provide solutions. And that makes us under the spirit of co-creation, and that makes us to be at par with the government at the same decision. And so it has only just begun. But aside that, again, the government is limited because in Nigeria, at the subnational, we found out that a lot of subnationals, the government are not so committed to addressing climate change issues. So there's little priority given around climate change issues. And that leaves the citizens, the civil society organizations, a huge responsibility to cover up that gap. So now it looks like we have to lead while the government follows us behind. And so it's been very difficult. We have tried to engage in climate governance a lot, looking at what are the budgets of the government around climate change issues, what are the governance processes, procurement process around around climate change, their priority projects, and it's been very, very poor. And even when you have very robust budgets around from the government, it's always not cash backed, which has been a huge issue for us. But then we cannot relent in our efforts. We can't just fold our hands because the government is not doing anything. And that is why through the coalition, we're able to push Extinction Rebellion. Kaduna is doing all it can. We're seeing, we're pushing as much as possible. And so we're trying to gain as much voices, as much support that we can do. And so there's much for us to do. There's quite a lot of support that we do. But in everything we do, it is important that we stay focused, and that has been our driving force. We have stayed focused, we have stayed united, we have sought for support from other groups because it will give us stronger voices and stronger impact in addressing these issues. The women are out there and they are really facing the heat of climate change. Right now, this year, we're having high amounts of rainfalls. And like I said earlier, the floods are high, and of course, leaving the women at the receiving end. And not just that, if the rain continues this way, there are some crops that might not be able to be planted at the end of the year because of the high amount of rainfall. But then, this is where we're calling on everyone to see how they can do to support us in Nigeria to be able to address these issues. Is it technically, words of encouragement can actually help us as well? Is it through funding or whatever support that we can get? I mean, we're open up to that to see how well we can support these women. The livelihood support program we have is just not enough for them. Teaching them vertical staff farming is not just enough for them. But you can see that the women are willing. They are willing and they are tired. They can actually tell that in their own layman understanding that there's something wrong with the climate. It's actually changing from the extreme temperatures to the inconsistency in the annual rainfall, to the floods and the droughts happening around. I mean, you could tell there is something wrong. You do not need a prophet, you do not need a soothsayer to say that, and they're already experiencing it. This is not the first year or the second year or the third year. It's a gradual process that is hitting and hitting and hitting, and if action is not taken, it will continue to hit. And we should all remember that the cost of addressing this impact far outweighs the cost of mitigating or adaptation that we have the opportunity now to do. So it's important we do that now before it's too late. I mean, the Global South needs a lot of support. The Global South needs a lot of help. And so we're counting on you all to give us that support. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gloria, for being such an inspiration for all of us. The next speaker will be Nyendo Kinyonga from Tanzania, and she's a climate change social scientist expert and the advocacy champion and a project coordinator for the Sustainable Development Goals. Happy to have you here, Nyendo.
Okay, as I was introduced, my name is Nyendo Kinyonga from Tanzania. Just advocating some issues of climate change and gender issues in Tanzania, but I'm working with different organizations on amplifying the issues of gender and the climate change. As today topics on the issue of gender and the climate change, I can share my experience in my country. When you talk about gender and the climate change, it's especially the vulnerability and the impact from women and men. You can say that women and girls are more vulnerable, and according to the nature of our country, or according to the nature in sub-Saharan Africa, we can say there are some of gender roles and responsibility. For example, in our culture, only women is the one who is responsible for doing all the activities concerning household issues like cooking, getting firewood, and the other issues. And when you look, all of these issues are climate sensitive. It means you can't get energy, or you can't get something for energy source at home without having climate related, because most of the places we are depending on the hydropower electricity. Likewise, on the issue of agriculture, in Tanzania, most of the women and girls are the small order farmers who are feeding their family. Due to climate change impact, most of this sector, agriculture, water, and energy, are vulnerable. This makes stress to the women and girls. Like in my initiatives of gender empowering on the different issues so that they can go and adapt, we are dealing with advocating issues of women to get information concerning climate change issues, how they can mitigate and how they can adapt, so that in the nearby future, especially for the girls who are getting those awareness raising education concerning climate change, they can be in a position to make a decision within those climate change issues. As most of these days, most of the decision maker, especially in our countries, you can say they are men compared to the women. So the decisions are made by the one who are less vulnerable, you can say. So when women are getting informed, when women are getting knowledge concerning what to do and not what to do concerning climate change issue, climate change impact, how those causes of climate change, it means they will be able to negotiate on these issues of climate change impact within their community, within their society, at the local level and at the international level. So what I can say, I'll say that gender issue is more important, especially to include women in the decision making, because they are the one who are vulnerable. They are the one who will amplify what are they suffering, so that it will reduce the vulnerability. For example, in our program, we called Girl-Led Action on Climate Change. It means we're empowering girls within the school in informal, non-formal education, so that in nearby future, they can know how to get those methods which they can use to adapt within their community level, or they can participate in different negotiation concerning climate change issues. Through that project, we also make the girls to advocate for climate change within the policymakers and the other international negotiation. For example, this year, we have the girls who will participate in COP27 through this project. So empowering the girls will use this gap of making the women more vulnerable in decision making. Likewise, like Gloria have said, we need collaboration, because we can't reach far if everyone can work individually or can work in a single organization. So when one initiative can join together and amplify this information, it means we'll reach a time we can have at least a common goals to address this problem related to climate change, and we can reduce some of the impact which within our hands. I can say that is from my perspective on gender and climate change justice.
Yeah, thank you, Nyendo, for your very powerful words. Unfortunately, we were not able to reach out to Yana Tul from Bangladesh. She would have been our first speaker of the day, but unfortunately, she can't be here. Maybe then, hopefully, another time. So thank you, you two, for being here. And we're so super grateful that you were able to speak at this event here today, and I guess answered many questions maybe that we had roaming around in our heads. And you're welcome to stay for the rest of the call, but if you're busy or have to do other things, then we understand if you have to go. But thank you again. We are now going to hear from Miriam from Letzte Generation Germany, who is going to talk about why civil resistance is the appropriate response to what we have just heard. Over to you, Miriam.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, first of all, thanks for telling your story. It's really, in Germany, we're just starting to feel the direct impact of climate change. So it's really nice to hear from other countries and to like be reminded of how bad it already is elsewhere. It's a good motivation for me. So I'm Miriam, I'm 30 years old, and I joined the German campaign, Letzte Generation, so last generation, at the end of last year. And I will talk a bit about why I chose civil disobedience and why I think it's like the best hope that we have. And yeah, it's a really bad situation that we're in, but I feel like civil resistance gives us a chance and there is reason to hope. Before I joined the campaign, I was very hopeless. I felt like there's nothing we can do. In Germany, we had the Fridays for Future movement. It got very big. So we had on one day 1.4 million people on the streets all over Germany. And the government's reaction was to release a climate plan that was later brought to the Constitutional Court in Germany and declared unconstitutional. So they just, all the nice words that they had for Fridays for Future, they just resulted in a climate plan that was certainly going to kill us, basically. So I had zero hope that demonstrations would fix anything. I didn't think that, well, if we're 1.5 million, then we'll get it. It's just, yeah, there's very little hope in that way. And I didn't know what else to do. But then what brought me to civil disobedience and what gave me like a glimpse of like, we can actually change something, we can have an impact, was the hunger strike of last generation in Germany, which was in last year in autumn. And it lasted for 27 days, what's the longest person on strike. And that was the point where my first thought was, that's crazy, like they're risking their lives. But then the more I thought about it, the more I realized that they're actually not risking much. Of course, they're risking their life in this moment. But if we look at the climate crisis and at what is coming towards us, if we don't act, that's just so much worse and so much more dangerous for our lives that it makes total sense to take those risks now to avoid these greater risks in the future. So I saw that people are like reaching at this thought of, actually, we don't have much to lose here. Like civil disobedience may come with a lot of risks, but it can, like, if we win, it could save us. And if we don't, then, well, what else should we do? It's like, then we're dead anyway. So it's definitely a risk worth taking. And this hunger strike was actually successful. So the demand to have a public conversation with our now Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, he actually had to agree with that because he had no choice. He had to either accept that at least one of them might die at the beginning of his his period, like becoming Chancellor, or he had to agree to this conversation. So these people actually took back some of the power that we have, but usually we don't feel that we have it. We feel like politics is doing it and we don't have a say. So that hunger strike woke me up to two things, to this idea that we don't have much to lose. The worst idea is to continue on the current path. That's the biggest risk. And that we can actually achieve something. And in Germany, we have a situation where the public is already further in terms of like being ready to act on climate than the government. So we saw that in a citizens' assembly last year that took place, where random citizens were chosen to discuss on and develop a climate plan for Germany. And they were informed and they came up with an amazing plan that was beyond everything the government had ever proposed. And we also had surveys afterwards in which 80% agreed with the suggestions from this citizens' assembly. But of course, it was not obligatory for the government, so they didn't put it in place. And we also see it in a lot of surveys on different climate topics, where you can see that the German public is actually ready to do things and knows that we need to act, or at least many people are, but the politics doesn't want to change. Like, they want to stay in their system. And we can see that lobbyism has such a huge impact on our government. So we need to create a counter movement against this lobbyism that puts even more pressure on the government. Otherwise, they won't act. And that's the point where civil disobedience for me is both justified and necessary. So we had the mass demonstrations and they were unsuccessful, they were ignored. And the public is already ready to go further than the politics are at the moment. So basically our government is blocking our way to the climate politics that we need. So then in January, I started blocking highways with Letzte Generation and also doing some other actions like shutting off oil pipelines or doing some more fun actions than sitting on highways. So I'm not risking my life like the people in hunger strike did, but I do risk like my safe, comfortable life. I definitely, I'm heading towards either jail time or being broke for I don't know how many years. But still, every time I doubt that I should do this, I think about what is coming towards us if we don't act, and the climate crisis would be so much worse. Like, I don't know what would I do with money in my bank account when we don't have enough drinking water. It just doesn't help me. And this, because we are kind of so afraid of the climate crisis, that makes us fearless for many other things. So I've seen that with so many people around me now, that every time before we go on that street, of course we're scared. We know that we will be yelled at and probably pulled off, and we don't know what exactly will happen, but we know that it won't be a pleasant experience. We know that it's not great to sit in police custody, but we still overcome these fears because our fear of the climate crisis is so much bigger. And that kind of gives us some empowerment. Like, when the police is coming towards me and threatening to put me in custody overnight, I can just say, okay, because I'm not afraid of custody overnight. It's really unpleasant. We don't even have mattresses, but it's still better than what's coming towards us if we don't act. So for me, that has been very inspiring to see what an incredible force of non-violent, but really committed people we have. And it will be very difficult to stop them. So we can see with these actions that we have a direct impact. We don't see it by we want something, we make our demands, and then the politicians agree. But we can see it with the media discussing our actions. Even in the beginning, when we were less than 30 people, we had front page news. We can see politicians discussing about us. We can see that it's impossible to ignore us. And that's exactly what we need. We don't need to be liked, but we have to be unignorable. In Germany, we have a situation where we are now too many people for the police to handle. So they want to keep us in custody for longer, but then the Justice Department lets us out because they don't have the grounds to keep us for that long. And then the politicians tell them to keep us longer to do something about us. And the Justice Department tells the politicians that to keep out of their business, basically. So we have this, we can see that we are just doing the same thing. We're just keeping, we're going onto the street again and again every day for weeks or months. And everything around us is struggling to contain us or to somehow deal with us. And so far, they haven't come up with any useful idea. So being in this campaign gave me some hope. I'm still not very hopeful because I don't think hope is a good word, because there are already people dying. so many people have already died from the climate crisis, and so many are dying right now. So saying that we are hopeful to, like, I don't know, end the climate crisis or like get it under control feels very weird because it's already too late for that. But still, we are not condemned to continue on this path. We can change our path, and we can make our governments change their path. So what we need for that is as many people as possible in civil resistance. So if you can imagine to sit on a street, get taken into custody at least once, do it. Join your campaign in your country. Do whatever you can to help us get the climate crisis under control as much as we can, as soon as we can. So contact your campaign, sign up for civil resistance, go to a nonviolence training. You can also support us. Like we need a lot of other support. So I know that I am very privileged to be able to do this in this way, and that not everyone is. So if I go broke, it's just me. I don't have children. I don't have anyone else depending on me. And I know that these factors are difficult to handle. Yeah, but you can also support us by donations. We need lots of donations for like everything from our fines up to like just getting places to live for everyone when we're in an action phase, and materials, all of that. We need support. We need people in action who are the caretakers, who make sure that we are all doing well, who cook for us or whatever it is. And we need people in mobilization who help us become more. So who organize talks and who mobilize towards these talks so that people will come and join our campaign. So if you can participate in any way, please do so. Back to Anne.
Thank you, Miriam, for sharing your story. We're now going to hear from Chloe from A22 in Italy about like her statement and her testimonial, like why she's taking action. So Chloe, now the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So my name is Chloe, and as Anna said, I'm from Ultima Generazione in the Italian campaign. And so a bit about me, I'm 24 years old and I'm actually a dancer. And I'd say that my involvement with the campaign has been gradual. Like I think everyone has kind of their process. And for me, I think for a long time, I was trying to sort of convince myself that the little actions and the little things were enough. And sadly enough, I think what actually led me to really get involved fully and do this truly and enter civil disobedience was realizing that I was basically doing the same thing that I'm complaining about the government's doing. I'm taking those little actions and talking around with friends and family and saying how big of an issue it is and how much I care, but I'm not actually doing every single thing that is in my power to truly see a difference in front of me. So I think this was the first thing, realizing that I was actually acting just the same way as a government representative were doing. And the second thing was realizing what a unique experience it is to be alive right now, and what another honor almost to have the chance to truly be a piece of the puzzle that can make a difference in such a pivotal moment. And I always say, like, I've always thought when I studied in school slavery or the Holocaust, I always wondered, you know, I have all these values, but what would I have done in those moments? Would I have collaborated, or would I have actually stood up for what I believe and helped the people who needed my help and at the risk of my own life, you know? And I always thought there would never be a way to know, and that I believe that I would have done the right choice, but you know, I would never actually know. But I truly believe that right now, this is a moment where we're in a similar situation, where we can actually see, like, am I brave enough to stand up for my values? Am I brave enough to go against what everybody is doing, to interrupt the illusion of status quo, the illusion of business as usual, because this is not happening. We've had, thank you so much for the testimonial before, because here we are seeing the consequences already. But I think most of all, if you live in the city, it's so easy to still pretend like nothing is happening because everybody is doing that. And yeah, so I think those are the two biggest things that actually led me to act. And what I've done until now, well, first of all, I've stopped dancing, or at least I've stopped pursuing the career in dancing, because that was just not compatible with what I believe is the true commitment to this cause. And I've begun, I'm now a mobilizer full-time in my city, in Milan. I've taken action. I've got into the street as well, like Miriam was talking about. We've blocked the roads in Italy, in the capital. And I've also done actions in New Zealand. And right now I'm outside because I'm supporting a 16 years old that right now is doing, has entered in a hunger strike. It's his second day. And so I'm coordinating the logistics around that. Yes, it's really beautiful to see how much people who truly connect to what is happening on the emotional level are able to do. And I think what I feel right now is really that I'm at the right place and I'm surrounded with the right people, like brave people who are actually able to look at this difficult moment and face reality and act accordingly, rather than just talk about it and complain and not do anything. And yes, I think civil disobedience is honestly the only way to truly live in coherence with the immensity of the danger we're facing. And it's the only way to embody how outraged we are with the continued procrastination of the governments, that the governments are showing in taking concrete measures. And it's also, I think, a beautiful way to remember that we actually have the power, because this is what civil disobedience really is acknowledging that we have the power, and the people in the governments only have the power if we give them our consent. And so as long as we continue to just ask and do demonstrations and act and follow the rules, we are giving them our consent. From the moment we say, I don't care about the consequences of what I do, because I am free and I know what we need to do, because you're supposed to know it as well, but you're not doing. And for me, from the moment we take our consent back, we disrupt, and we, as Miriam said, we make it impossible for people to ignore us. This is the moment where we really remember ourselves and remind everyone around us that we actually have the power, and we only have to decide to act like it and to remember it every day. And so I really hope that people in this call will make this choice and remember and try to feel it in their bones, and as they go into talks and as they go into action, actually remember in the body what it means to be free, what it means to have the power to decide for your life and to have an impact in this crucial moment in history. So thank you everyone for coming, and I hope you will join us, because we need as many people as possible.
Thank you, Chloe, for giving me some goosebumps. That was very powerful. We're now going to hear from Michelle from Declare Emergency, her statement about why she's going into action.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to the speakers for their presentation. My name is Michelle, and in transparency, I'm really nervous about being here, but I do think it's important that we all come forward and step out of our comfort zones to do this work. I'm with Declare Emergency in the US. I don't classify myself as an activist. I am a person who is absolutely terrified of what is coming up the pipeline for us all. My grandson is 6 years old, and his future is looking pretty terrifying. I was aware of climate change back in the late 80s as a wildland firefighter and a ski patroller. I was outdoors all the time, but I just naively, looking back now, thought that our leaders were looking after us. They have the best intelligence. Arguably, the US has the best intelligence of the world. They know what is going on. So that was my thought. I did all the right things. I recycled, I rode my bike, public transport, did a garden, shop locally. I go to rallies and marches thinking, you know, petitions, town halls, all those things, and performative actions as well, because they felt good. They felt like they were doing something. And I also thought we had more time. So when I learned that the truth of the extent of what we're in, it was like I was struck in the gut with a boulder. It was so profound. It just shook me to the core. I bawled like a baby at the bottom of our stairs for probably a good 15 minutes when I learned. I just couldn't believe, where we're at. And after that, I just kind of started like, we've got to do something. There's got to do something. So that led me down kind of the pathway of where we needed to go, and a recognition too that we don't have time for incremental reformist change any longer. We don't have time. The fossil fuel industry is paying our leaders to kill us all. I've been with Declare Emergency since January of this year. I've been involved with other organizations and stuff, Extinction Rebellion, the list kind of goes on, but we need to do more. And what Declare Emergency brought to me is that platform of more. I've been arrested since then 4 times, and I just really believe in what in the strategy and what we need to do here. So it's not that we find ourselves in this situation that hurts. I mean, it's awful, it's terrible, it's tragic. But what really gets me is that we are in this situation, and yet where's our will to do what we need to do? We've gone to the moon. We've seen thousands of light years into the future. And we've seen the smallest atomic particles. We absolutely can do this. I have no doubt that we can do this. So women in leadership roles, I mean, our contribution is powerful. Don't ever think otherwise. I am prepared to take on the brutality of the system, whatever that means, and it scares the shit out of me. It really does, but I can't not go down swinging. I want to be able to have no regrets for my grandson that I didn't do everything I possibly could. And civil resistance is all we have left. If we don't act in non-violent civil resistance now, we're going to see violence coming our way in a right hurry. We don't rally and put signs in front of Auschwitz. Action is what brings hope. It's not the other way around. Hope brings despair because we're relying on the other. It's us. This is where the power is. So I just want to thank all the amazing speakers before us and recognize that the Global South needs us to act now. The world needs us to act now. All of us. I just want to finish with a quote from Larry Kramer, who led the ACT UP for AIDS here in the US. If we don't get on the streets, we are all going to fucking die. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Michelle, for these honest and beautiful words. And thank you to both of you, Chloe and Michelle, for your statements, the courage and sacrifice you're showing, and all the effort you put into doing what you're doing.